Loli, power, combat, invincible, single, traveling through the era of universal supernatural talent, Lin Anran realized that he not only awakened the lowest level of culinary talent, but also was forcibly married by the original owner's family to an old pervert's home. How can this be tolerated? So Lin Anran, relying on his mutated culinary talent, fiercely took down his scumbag father and scumbag mother with his left kitchen knife and right spatula, turning his always arrogant and domineering sister into a loyal pet. I thought I could live a happy life here, but I found a huge fireball falling from the sky, instantly destroying the city where she was located. A foreign race in this world is in chaos. In the end, it was discovered that it was a collusion between high-level humans and other races. Helpless, I can only temporarily leave this city full of decaying people. At the last moment, the alien race finally showed its ambition to completely slaughter humanity. When I wanted to gather troops, I found that the city was already empty. Leave only a large restaurant in the center. Do you want something to eat? I have everything here. Steamed beef leg and braised goblin. Of course, there are also the characteristics of our human race. Corrupt high-level minds. The pretty girl standing on the small stool said with a smile on her face. Chapter 1. Scars. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Cold, fleeting, death. He suddenly felt a strong sense of despair that he had never experienced before. This feeling is even more intense than when he was attacked by countless strong men in the Steel City. He struggled to sit up from the ground, reaching out to cover his forehead, which was about to crack with a headache, but suddenly realized that his palms had become incredibly small and thin. But looking down at the intense pain on his body, he found something even more shocking. I saw a terrifying scar on the slender left wrist. It's like being heavily chopped off by some sharp tool, with pure white skin flipped outwards, accompanied by constantly flowing fresh red blood. The red blood converged into a river, flowing slowly along this delicate limb and turning into blood droplets at its endpoint, dripping to the ground. This may be a very poignant scene, and if someone else were to prevent the destruction of this beautiful mood, he would only feel the horror when it was his turn. He quickly picked up a relatively clean towel around him, wrapped the wound on his wrist with force, and temporarily slowed down the blood flow. Then he took a deep breath to relieve the tension in his heart, picked up a phone wrapped in a cute pink phone case, and quickly dialed 120. After a moment, accompanied by the sound of the ambulance siren, he went to the hospital. Lin Anran, right. How could a little girl cut her wrist and commit suicide so easily? You're so young, isn't it a pity to just die like this? The doctor in front of him was complaining, and Lin Anran sat obediently across from him, seemingly humble in listening, but in reality, his mind had no idea where he had flown. Just now, he realized that he was no longer the super tough guy he used to be, with all 18 under his savings. But instead, she became a sickly girl named Loli who had just committed suicide by cutting her wrist and was not as tall as her age. So nowadays, young people are really like when I was your age, each one was a super talented person who could carry half of the sky, wielding a big knife from day to night, without any rest. The doctor's complaints continue. Listening to the noisy voices in his ears, Lin Anran's head also popped out with many memories, all of which were the memories of the sickly and weak Loli, who had cut her wrist. Closing his eyes and accepting everything, he finally understood the ins and outs of everything. Simply put, Lin Anran is the illegitimate daughter of a wealthy family. There is no right, there is cannon fodder that is difficult to withstand. Later, she reluctantly entered a prestigious school in the central urban area through her own efforts, which also led to the decreasing control of her family over her. But all of this experience and effort seriously consumed her mind, causing her body to visibly decline. And today, Lin Anran underwent a natural awakening. The awakening of talent is a turning point in everyone's destiny, which can make a genius praised by everyone suddenly become a useless person, or a person with nothing suddenly become a genius admired by all beings. It can be said that the little girl in her original form almost gambled everything on that moment. But unfortunately, things didn't go as planned. At that highly anticipated moment, she failed. The sky monument is white, and one's life profession. A line between the forehead, inferior qualification. Symbol manifestation, a shovel. She eventually awakened her talent as a chef. This result was also announced by the teacher, and there were countless sighs and boos from the audience. These people all know. Another hard-working genius fell from this turning point and became a post-dinner joke for countless people in the college. At that time, the original owner heard the sighs of the students below and saw the regretful gaze of the teachers around him, feeling as if he had lost all his strength. And to make matters worse, after that, the long unseen family suddenly dispatched a minion to find her, requesting her to go home immediately and then use it as a marriage tool to marry an old man with a special hobby, contributing the last light and heat to the family. So her predecessor suddenly felt that something that had been tense in her body had finally broken. She ran back to her rented house in a daze, picked up a fruit knife, and gave herself a hard blow. Then he crossed over and took over these mess. Sigh. Lin Anran couldn't help but sigh, feeling a strong injustice towards her original fate. But since he has come up with it, let's seek some justice from the original owner. But it's fair. He lowered his head and a mocking smile curved from the corner of his mouth. He used to be a down-to-earth villain, but now he has turned into a frail little girl who has to take over her life and face the things that drive her crazy. Child, if you can't hold on to something, let me hold it for you. I will let them go down to accompany you. I hope you won't give up on yourself like that. Then, can I leave now? Lin Anran said silently, lifting her head and interrupting the chattering doctor in front of her. Sigh. These children nowadays lack patience all day long and don't even understand the principles of respecting the elderly and loving the young. You should know that these great principles of mine are hard to exchange outside. The doctor sighed and leisurely wrote a payment receipt. With a flick of his finger, the receipt came to Lin Anran. A total of 60,000 yuan, go to the doorstep to pay the bill. After saying these words, the doctor put his leg on the consultation table and picked up his phone to brush up aimlessly. Reaching out and picking up the list, looking at the string of numbers on it, Lin Anran didn't say anything, just stood up silently and left the diagnostic room. During the treatment just now, she also looked and simply opened her own bandage, sprinkled an unknown bottle of medicine, and then wrapped it up. Throughout, the doctor did not ask Lin Anran for any of her own opinions. This mandatory treatment and the attitude of expressing her own values without understanding the truth just now made her have no favorable impression of this doctor. However, feeling that his wrist seemed to be slowly recovering, Lin Anran could only leave the room and come to the machine in the hospital hallway. After scanning the order, the machine popped up information about her identity. Choosing to pay, she took out the pink phone, entered the password in her memory, opened the screen, and sent her small amount of money into the machine. After a while, Lin Anran, who had finished everything, walked out of the noisy hospital and stood on the street with the piercing cold wind. Lin Anran glanced at her balance. There is still around 3,000 yuan left, but I don't remember anything that needs to be paid recently, so it's barely enough for her living. By the way, we still need to find a solution to the family's troubles. Speaking of which, it seems like a world with extraordinary abilities. I wonder if my culinary talent can make me earn some money. Lin Anran wrapped her thin coat tightly around her body, making her already petite figure even more delicate and fragile. But how can this casually picked up clothes withstand the coldness of the night? A cold wind struck, and she still shivered from the cold. And it seems to be due to some anemia, making her feel like everything around her is constantly shaking. Despite gritting her teeth, she still took out her phone, used her remaining balance to take a taxi, and returned home. Chapter 2. Kitchen God. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Return to the rental cabin. After closing the anti-theft door, Lin Anran found several compressed biscuits for emergency storage. After struggling to swallow them, she also turned off the lights and lay down on the bed. Huddled under the blanket, she finally relaxed her tense mind slightly. Although everything about this world does exist in her memory, it is only an image in her memory. When she observed everything here with her own eyes, an inexplicable sense of disconnection still inevitably appeared in her perception. Especially when I saw a drunken man flying in the air on the street, but suddenly being thrown out by a person in police uniform with a flying handcuff, no, a headband like a cowboy trying to catch a cow, and then pulled down to educate him. This feeling has reached its peak. What kind of aliens are these? Lin Anran sighed and looked at the ceiling with lifeless eyes. The room fell into silence, and occasionally one could hear the noise of night travelers on the street outside. After a while, she flipped over, wanting to see what effect her chef's talent had. She needs to shift her attention. Because just as she was silent, the pain on her wrist seemed to clear countless times, forcing her to inevitably focus on the wound. Then it hurt even more. Lin Anran is a cool guy who can pretend to be a riddle with a cold face even if he has a broken arm or leg in his past life. Now, with a small wound, he is crying in pain and almost loses his golden bean. It's really strange. So she extended her delicate and white fingers out of the bed, and her index finger dashed through the air. In just an instant, a panel emerged from the void. Seeing this azure and semi-transparent box, Lin Anran was amazed. This is a strange thing she has never seen before. Lin Anran, talent. Kitchen god, unique energy. 100, slim, talent skills. Kitchen god fire, kitchenware summoning, super cooking, kitchen god road, this is her talent in this world, and it is also the talent that excites the original owner to suicide. Wait a minute, what seems different? Lin Anran suddenly noticed that his talent column behind him was not the chef in the original owner's memory, but a kitchen god who looked even more towering. She rubbed her eyes again and looked at the text engraved on the panel. No matter how many times you watch it, the one displayed above is still the kitchen god. This is probably because I traveled through time, and the effect of my skills seems to have changed a lot. She continued to mutter to herself, trying to divert her attention with this way of explanation to prevent her mind from being filled with pain in her wrist. Turning back to the panel, the original owner's awakened chef only had one cooking talent skill. As a natural skill, cooking skills are simply better than nothing, and even some people who cook for a long time can awaken themselves on their own. And each skill awakened by the initial talent is closely linked to various future developments. That is to say, your initial talent skill is chopping, so no matter how advanced or upgraded this skill is in the future, it will be related to its effects. For example, chopping can become thunderbolt slash, and hammering can become earth meteor hammer. These are all further upgrades based on the original foundation, enhancing their effectiveness several times. So no matter how much the cooking skill is improved, it only ends up being able to make better dishes. It's easy to say that one's original self is just an ordinary person, as ordinary people have their own lives. Unfortunately, considering her background and identity, this skill is simply useless. I hope this kitchen god's skills don't disappoint me. Lin Anran huddled under the blanket, her hands clasped together, praying to the heavens of the other world. She just hopes that one of these 4 skills can have some effect. If all 4 of them are just cooking, then she won't think about retaliating against the world. Or when it comes to the end of the marriage, she can find a place to open a restaurant and pour laxatives from the food to retaliate against society. If it's not a big deal, she will make it more delicious and let those diners eat while pulling. Anyway, those kitchen gods have quirks, so why does she like to take laxatives from her food? After all, it's unclear whether she can still come out after the marriage alliance. I heard that the old man is a pervert among perverts, and just thinking about it makes me shudder. Lin Anran sighed, although she used to be an iron-blooded man, she still had to be afraid of some things. She's just a tough guy, not a tough guy, without that diamond iron but. As the saying goes, a straight man's rectum is also warm, and as a tough guy, she also has something to fear. Moreover, she is no longer the tough guy she used to be. Based on her past life memories, she can see that she has experienced many methods that can torture people. Even during pregnancy, when a woman's belly is high and bulging, there are abnormal behaviors that can be taught to her. It's really hard to imagine what will happen with Lin Anran's thin and weak body now. After a moment, she shook her head and shook the filthy things out of her mind, then began to carefully examine the introduction of her innate skills. Just long press the skill to view it, which is very user-friendly. Fire of the Kitchen God, passive. The foundation of culinary super cuisine, which can cook any ingredient and stimulate the most essential taste of food. Follow energy level upgrade, unfortunately. After reading the introduction, Lin Anran let out a sigh of regret. Although this is a noble passive skill, it actually lacks any attack ability. She thought this fire could directly burn people. However, looking at the description of the skill at the end, it seems that this skill can be upgraded along with its energy level. The future is promising. But on second thought, it seems good to heat up the pot with fire and then use the pot to smash people. Moreover, she seems to have a skill that can summon a pot, so she doesn't need to bring her own pot now. Kitchenware summoning. Allows summoning exclusive kitchenware. 3 types of kitchenware. Brave pot shovel, Demon King's kitchen knife, and ordinary iron pot. It looks like there are plenty of flaws. Although the names of these things may seem strange, Lin Anran still sat up from the bed and raised his unharmed right hand high, attempting to summon the brave pot shovel. Come out. Brave spatula. She let out a loud shout. In an instant, countless brilliant golden dots converged from her fingertips in all directions, forming a golden spiral, and finally forming a dazzling giant ball of light. Lin Anran suddenly felt as if her right hand had touched something hard, so she tightly grasped it and pulled it out with all her might. Suddenly, a golden spatula appeared in her hand. The whole body of the spatula is made of gold, just like pure gold, and it looks extremely precious. The tip of the spatula was extremely sharp, and Lin Anran tried to look with her eyes. The flashing cold light made her unconsciously shiver. Painfully pulling down a strand of hair, gently placing it on the tip of the spatula. Just as soon as it was touched, the strand of hair broke without any warning, without any obstruction in the middle. I've decided, I'll use this to chop people in the future. Bah! Cooking. Seeing this scene, Lin Anran nodded in satisfaction. Sure enough, when God closes a door, he opens a window. Even if you are just a cook, your idol can be Hannibal. Learning to be a good person from an idol is really great. I hope these last 2 skills can create some new life, so that she can also be like an idol and start a series of things. A set for vegetarians and a set for meat eaters. Recipe. Pooh. The most important thing is to have a diverse and comprehensive development of human culture. Chapter 3. Lin Anran possesses qualities. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Having established lofty ideals is the next 2 skills. The remaining 2 super cooking and chef god's road are both passive skills. The path of the kitchen god allows Lin Anran to acquire new special abilities by capturing advanced ingredients or creating high-quality dishes. It's about upgrading and unlocking new abilities, and the future is promising. By the way, the current level of this passive ability is level 0. And the other one is even more powerful. It can allow Lin Anran to gain a sharper intuition while hunting and cooking, as well as an additional active skill called identification. And identifying this skill in this world can be basically said to be a panacea, belonging to the super valuable skill of universal employment. As long as you have this skill, even if your talent is a defecator, you can enter some high-end restaurants or auction venues to work. And the treatment is super excellent. The solidity of a job is basically equivalent to being a civil servant in one's past life, and the rest of one's life is basically spent peacefully. It is obvious that Lin Anran now has this opportunity to live a stable life. However, despite that, the word stability seems to have nothing to do with my current situation. Lin Anran sighed and said, even if she only wants to be an ordinary chef, or go to any company with good salary and benefits to be an appraisal mascot. But under the interference of the Lin family, which is also the Lin Anran family, it is unlikely. The most basic thing is to go home and work, and considering Lin Anran's current status, most of the work is also difficult and not pleasing. Moreover, the Lin family arranged for her to have a marriage alliance partner who shook her head even after seeing the dog. In this situation, even the original owner, who was like a little lamb, was so angry that he committed suicide, let alone the current Lin Anran who was determined to repay him. Not lifting the Lin family would be considered a waste of her life. Anyway, go to bed first. Only when you have enough sleep can you have the energy to deal with those silly birds. Shaking her head, Lin Anran reached out to gather her black hair over her shoulder, placed her mummified left wrist, and found a comfortable position to close her eyes. No matter what, we'll talk about it tomorrow. If there's really no way we can handle the marriage alliance, we'll leave the city at best. Go to the wilderness to survive. Anyway, she brought a spatula and a large pot, so she didn't have to worry about food and drink. After all, with her current and promising future, if you let her endure for 30 years, I estimate that even heaven can poke a hole in your face. Ding-ling-ling. I don't know how long it has been, but a noisy phone call awakened Lin Anran from the endless darkness. She cautiously poked her head out of the blanket and squinted her eyes as she looked around. But seeing the familiar and unfamiliar bedroom decorations around her, Lin Anran finally realized her current situation. She is no longer the crisis-ridden identity she used to be. Just a poor girl about to be married. Following the sound, I finally found my buzzing pink phone on the bedside table next to me. Lin Anran stretched out her right hand from the warm blanket and only grabbed the phone after stretching hard. Hello. Who is it? Lin Anran instinctively pressed the answer button, placed her phone next to the pillow, and closed her half-closed eyes again. She hasn't woken up yet. You don't need to go to school today, just go home and discuss the dowry with the Bai family. A cold middle-aged female voice rang from the other end of the phone, with an unquestionable tone, as if giving orders. This tone immediately awakened Lin Anran's half-asleep consciousness, and at the same time, the identity information on the other end of the phone kept popping up in her mind. Yen Qiu, the ex-wife of the current head of the Lin family, is also the biological mother of this body. At the same time, it is also the culprit who demanded that Lin Anran marry. Thinking of this, Lin Anran immediately had no favorable impression of the person over there. Discussing the dowry with the Bai family. What am I involved in this matter? Lin Anran closed her eyes and spoke casually. Then just send me your identification. The family record card is with me, and you can give me your card. The voice on the other end of the phone is still indifferent. The family record card is equivalent to a household registration book, while Lin Anran's card refers to her personal information card. That card stores Lin Anran's personal information, and many registration activities require a personal information card. Simply put, it is something similar to an ID card, but this personal information card contains all personal information and can be considered a universal identity document for the entire human race. Ah! What do you need my identification for? Lin Anran pretended to be puzzled and said, isn't it that you want to have a second spring in your middle age? I was quite happy when the family's lackey came to me in the afternoon. After all, the most useless waste in your family is finally going to become a young lady and explode gold coins for me. After thinking for a moment, she added. You two are a perfect match. Even though that person is a scumbag, you are also considered a high achiever, so don't be picky either. Lin Anran. What are you talking about, you beast? Before Lin Anran could finish speaking, an angry female voice was transmitted through a mobile phone signal, accompanied by some sounds of smashing cups. Animals are also born of animals, after all, dragons and phoenixes are born of phoenixes. What can give birth to something? Lin Anran opened his eyes, although his face was expressionless, his tone carried a hint of mockery. Do you think so, old beast? Lin Anran, are you crazy? How did you talk to your mother? On the other end of the phone, Yen Qiu, Lin Anran's biological mother, angrily shouted loudly, with a hint of hysteria mixed in her words. After realizing this, Lin Anran sighed. This is a sigh for the original owner. In the original owner's memory, since Yen Qiu divorced her biological father Lin Yejuan, Yen Qiu has often used this hysterical attitude towards her. Due to this childhood experience, the original protagonist became an extremely lacking person in love, and also developed an introverted personality. This also led to the ultimate outcome of the original owner being suicide. If Lin Anran had chosen it himself, he would probably have gone to find a bomb and all of them would have been killed during the negotiations. Perhaps some people did not die due to their extraordinary abilities. But it doesn't matter, anyway she's dead, these people can't retaliate against her anymore. Don't ask. The question is, Lin Anran is a great filial son. Alright, if you have the ability, go tell Lin Mengyue and see if Miss Lin recognizes your father's ex-wife. Lin Mengyue is a girl born to Lin Anran's biological father and Yen Qiu after their divorce and remarriage. She has a proud nature and is a reliable and domineering daughter. Lin Anran, you beast. You. Alright, if there's nothing else, I'll just hang up. I don't have time to hear you curse like a shrew here at night. After Lin Anran finished speaking, she reached out and picked up her phone, her fingers resting on the hang-up button. Lin Anran, if you dare to hang up this phone call for me today, then I will never recognize you as a daughter again. Yen Qiu roared hysterically on the phone. What are you? A dog barks twice and pretends to be human. The only response to Yen Qiu was Lin Anran's indifferent voice, followed by the beep of the phone hanging up. In the rental house where Yen Qiu was located, there was a loud roar of women's madness and the sound of various things being smashed. This caused nearby tenants to curse at this person who disturbed the residents in the middle of the night in the community group. Thinking about the original owner like this is really tragic. On the other side, after hanging up the phone, Lin Anran collapsed on the bed, staring blankly at the ceiling. Previously, she knew about someone like Yen Qiu and also knew that the original owner cared a lot about him. But it wasn't until the call was answered that Lin Anran remembered how much the original owner had paid to serve Yen Qiu. At the beginning, when Lin Yejuan, Lin Anran's biological father, and Yen Qiu called to divorce, they actually wanted to keep Lin Anran. Because no matter what, Lin Anran is still his child, and he cares to some extent. But Yen Qiu unexpectedly brought up a scandal from many years ago, forcing Lin Yejuan to let go, which led to the darkest life for Lin Anran. Otherwise, the original owner might still be playing with real and fake heirlooms in the Lin family. No, it should be a scene of new and old heirlooms vying for favor. At the time of divorce, the original owner was only 3 years old. After the divorce, Yen Qiu shed tears every day and did not go to work. Her daily expenses relied entirely on the child support provided by Lin Yejuan to her former owner. Spending the original owner's alimony while also beating and scolding the original owner is truly suffering. And in the following years, Yen Qiu hardly ever took control of the original owner. Fortunately, the original owner had a kind nature, and in the end, he only developed an introverted, and pleasing personality. Finally, the original owner relied on hard work to get into Central Academy, temporarily breaking ties with this hysterical woman. Chapter 4. Suffering. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hiss. Thinking about it this way, it seems that all the suffering of the original owner was caused by Yen Qiu. I took it with me during the divorce and even used the original owner's money, and in the end, I had to make the original owner a sacrifice. Lin Anran suddenly became completely transparent. She didn't immediately remember it before, it was entirely because the original owner had become accustomed to Yan Qiu's behavior. For the inexperienced original owner, it is believed that this situation is the norm in the world. It's like waking up one day without wondering why you haven't slept on the clouds. Because you have long been accustomed to this kind of thing. And it is precisely because the original owner has become accustomed to everything about Yan Qiu that Lin Anran did not notice any abnormalities in the first place. Is it true that this hysterical and demonic person is the creator of the greatest suffering of the original owner? Lin Anran feels like she has caught the truth. Even if we were to diverge our thinking a bit, would it be possible that marrying Lin Anran was also to achieve a certain aspect of Yan Qiu's plan? In the following time, Lin Anran no longer felt sleepy. She even got up and went to the writing desk, gritting her teeth to record all the absurd things Yan Qiu had done to her in a notebook. A thick notebook, in no time, I actually wrote half of it, and it was filled with Lin Anran's hatred towards Yan Qiu. I'm so speechless, even those who used to treat Black Brother wouldn't do this. Lin Anran gritted his teeth and said. The notebook in front of her was recording the story of the original owner, who was locked up at home without food and had no choice but to nibble on toilet paper when he was young. At that time, it was when Yan Qiugang divorced, and he spent all day borrowing alcohol from the bar with the original owner's support to ease his worries. And because he felt it inconvenient to bring the young Lin Anran, he decided to just leave her at home and lock the door. By the way, when Yan Qiu returned home and found that the original owner was eating toilet paper, she even used a broomstick to hit the back of the original owner hard. He was still cursing at some extremely obscene words. What about losing money and seeing the goods? What about liking to eat white things when I was a child, growing up like a blue pond, and so on? This makes the original owner still remember it to this day. Even the original owner still has shadows, and the toilet paper used dare not use white, but instead the color of the original wood. And this kind of thing didn't just happen once. But thanks to that gift, after the original owner became hungry, he no longer dared to steal anything, but curled up in a ball and chose to silently endure. It can be said that Lin Anran's current height was bestowed upon her at that time, and without sufficient nutrition, her life would be ordinary. Anyway, the more I recall it, the more angry Lin Anran's eyes became. He wished he could use his spatula to crack open that hysterical thing. Dingling bell, she was frantically writing when suddenly the alarm clock next to her rang. Turning his head to take a glance at the time, he realized that it had unknowingly passed for over an hour, and now it was time to wake up. Lin Anran lowered her head and glanced at the things she had written before. Then, with a snap, she closed her notebook, moved her chair, and stood up. Following the instructions in my memory, I went to the restroom to meet my physiological needs and comfortably went to the mirror to wash up. And this finally allowed her to see her current appearance clearly. A shoulder-length black hair paired with jet black big eyes, a slightly emaciated face and a bright red on the lips. Perhaps due to excessive blood loss last night and long-term malnutrition, Lin Anran's skin has now shown some unhealthy paleness. But this did not give people a sense of serious decay, but rather added a touch of pity and a unique touch of a small vampire aristocrat. I'm so beautiful. Lin Anran looked at herself in the mirror and murmured to herself. Although there are also scenes of looking in the mirror in my memory, these are all things that the original owner takes for granted. In addition, the original owner hardly applies makeup and does not pay too much attention to his appearance. Or perhaps due to Yan Qiu, the original owner was already exhausted from living every day and had no interest in dressing up. This dog days Yan Qiu. Speaking of Yan Qiu, Lin Anran remembered the things recorded in his notebook and couldn't help but scold angrily. After coming out of the toilet, Lin Anran opened the wardrobe and took out a uniform from inside. The uniform is a black dress-like style, with a scholarly and very elegant feeling. It is worth mentioning that the uniform does not have pants, but is replaced by a beautiful little skirt that does not exceed the knee length. Perhaps due to the influence of memory in her body, Lin Anran did not resist this beautiful little dress too much. Just out of the insistence of a fierce man, she ultimately chose to wear a charming pumpkin pants under her little skirt. After solving the most important dress problem, she easily put on this somewhat elegant women's uniform. Looking at her intellectual self in the mirror, Lin Anran nodded in satisfaction, casually tied a regular ponytail, picked up her small backpack, and walked out. The rental house chosen by Lin Anran is actually located next to the college, and because it is very close to the college, coupled with some subsidies from the college, this has led to almost all students in the community. On the road, Lin Anran also saw many students wearing the same uniform coming and going. I casually found a breakfast shop and bought a few buns. After finishing breakfast, Lin Anran went straight into the college. But I don't know if it's because of the bandage on Lin Anran's left wrist. This morning, she could always notice people around secretly peeping at her. Following the direction of memory, Lin Anran pushed open the door in front of her and walked into her own classroom. But with the appearance of Lin Anran, the entire lively classroom suddenly fell silent. All the students turned their gaze to Lin Anran's petite figure, and then lowered their voices to start discussing with the classmates around them. Lin Anran sat back in her seat, took out a textbook called Basic Literacy of Talent from her small bag, and began reading. Although in my memory, the original owner carefully previewed this book that had not yet started learning. But after all, memory is just memory, and Lin Anran thinks it's still necessary to take a practical look. After half a while, Lin Anran also read about half of it, and at least she understood some key basic things. The next step is to find a few people with good abilities and see them firsthand. Look. That girl still has the face to come to school. Just as Lin Anran was planning to go out to the actual combat department to take a look, he suddenly heard someone whispering behind him. It seems that due to some excitement, the voice of the person making the sound was not lowered in time, and it was also clearly captured by Lin Anran. She sat down again calmly, as if forgetting something, and began to take out her backpack to search. Ah! What's going on? What's wrong with her? Another faint voice rang out. Although the owner of the voice had tried his best to lower it, it was still recognized by Lin Anran calmly. Ah! Don't you know? It's already gone crazy on the school forum. Is it really fake? Let me see. As the conversation behind him ended, Lin Anran stood up again as if he had found something and left the classroom. This morning is all self-study time. But although it's self-study, there are no teachers to manage it, basically it's just free activities. However, despite this, no one would run around and be extremely conscious in handling their own affairs. Lin Anran walked out of the classroom, casually found a remote bench to sit on, took out her phone, and opened the school forum. This school forum is said to be a forum, which is actually an official account of a school. Students can post some posts in it, and others can like and comment on it. Some posts with a lot of likes or comments will be automatically topped by the forum, making it easier for more people to view. And just as Lin Anran opened the forum, she saw a photo of herself at first glance. In the photo, Lin Anran lowered her head and wore a standard uniform. But due to their appearance and height, they appear somewhat cute and petite. But the most eye-catching part of the entire photo is the white bandage on Lin Anran's left wrist. Because the sun came out quickly this morning and the temperature was not as low as at night, Lin Anran did not wear too thick, only a layer and a half sleeves inside, and a uniform jacket outside. And in order to prevent the cuff of her uniform from squeezing the wound on her wrist, she simply rolled up the cuff on her left wrist. So there was this picture that captured the bandage very clearly. Lin Anran continued to watch, but the result was a video. Chapter 5. Encounter. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lin Anran chose to open the video, only to find a woman inside. This woman is Yen Qiu. Lin Anran was momentarily taken aback, as if she had some speculations about the development of the plot that followed. In the video, Yen Qiu first took out a screenshot of a family record card and placed it in front of the camera, letting those watching the video know about her relationship with Lin Anran. Then with a flick of his mouth, he burst into tears in front of the camera. "I know you're unhappy with your dear mother, but you can't just casually give your body to someone else. My dear daughter. Lin Anran, ah. I know you have too much dissatisfaction with me, and I also know that you have always despised your family's poverty and lack of money, even wanting to do some self-deprecating behavior for the sake of money." In the picture, Yen Qiu covers her face and cries bitterly, with a sincere expression of sadness for her. "Yeah. As your classmate, I really can't bear to watch anymore." At this moment, a beautiful girl wearing a school uniform appeared in the screen. As soon as she came up, she pointed her finger at the camera, as if talking to Lin Anran through the screen. "Because of your scandals, Aunt Yen has been crying all day and even trying to satisfy your endless desire to spend money by taking you on blind dates with men who have some small money. And you. First, you cleanly accepted the exorbitant dowry they gave you, and then turned around to have promiscuous relationships with those wealthy second-generation people. What do you want them to do? And that hand of yours? Did you cut it off while mating with some crazy rich second generation? I really didn't want to make things worse, but you shamelessly ran into school like nothing had happened. It really makes me sick." The girl criticized the camera, seemingly losing control of her emotions, but in reality, she had good control and did not lose her composure due to anger. "Alright, classmate, please don't say anything more." Yen Qiu finally stopped covering her face and reached out to stop the girl's impulse to continue speaking. "Mom doesn't really want to force you or anything. Just don't be impulsive and run away from home anymore. Come back obediently, let's live a good life, okay?" Yen Qiu squeezed out a few tears from her eyes, her tone filled with pleading, and she had already put on an attitude of considering women. "If you really don't like that blind date, then even if your mother sells iron to make money, she will return the expensive dowry, just hoping that you can live happily." With Yen Qiu's sincere and hopeful words at the end, the entire video came to an end. Until the phone automatically shut down due to not being operated for too long, Lin Anran still sat on the bench, staring blankly. Sleeping trough. What kind of person is this? It wasn't until a while that she regained her senses, like a newly connected game character. She stiffly pressed the light on her phone and flipped through the comments below the video. Although she had some speculations before watching the video, she still lived in Bengbu. As someone who has experienced almost every situation in their past life, it's okay if you get a bit of real knife and gun intrigue. After all, even if there is a problem, one's skills are not up to par. But now this situation really makes her a bit angry. You also said that I was playing with the second generation of perverted rich people. I am really. Lin Anran was a bit angry and got up from the chair with a sudden drop of her phone. In this situation, perhaps ordinary people would think of hastily ending the spread of such rumors and restoring their reputation. If it were the original owner, they would definitely rush to report to the police and find the teacher, and then accuse and fabricate a series of criminal evidence. But now it's not the original owner, but the new version of Lin Anran. I saw this slender girl with a low altitude, her face full of anger and frustration, gnawing on her thumb. Her beautiful black eyes were full of darkness. She wants to kill both of these people. Unlike other indecisive and reputation-conscious individuals, when faced with a situation that affects her reputation, she will think of solving the problem from the root. Namely, first eliminate those who spread rumors, and then slowly slaughter those who spread rumors. So there will be no more problems. A noble person once said, "Idle talk exists all day long, if you don't listen, there will be none." But the function of the ear is to listen. How can Lin Anran deny the function of her own organs? So we can only compromise the person who is speaking. Just pull someone's mouth off and you won't hear any gossip. What dishes can a rumor monger make? Inevitably, perhaps due to the influence of his own talent, Lin Anran naturally thought of the cuisine. Then he contacted his own appraisal skill. After much thought, Lin Anran picked up her phone again, and her beautiful little face could be clearly reflected through the black screen that was not lit up. Identification. Lip movement. In the next moment, a string of information entered her mind. Skin, human. Boiled fried cold mixed. Folded, lips, people. Sashimi fried steamed. Folded, It seems like this thing is even more mouth-watering than I imagined. Lin Anran couldn't help but twitch his lips, and then temporarily put away his dangerous thoughts. At the end of the day, there's nothing we can do here, it's really troublesome. Lin Anran sighed. She suddenly remembered that it was no longer the world she used to be. There were various talents in this world, and if there was one who could assist in solving cases, wouldn't it be troublesome? Lin Anran was also hunted and wanted every day in his previous life, so he can be considered tired of this series of things. Until the last moment, she still didn't want to expose herself to this situation. Repeat the script of the previous life. Oh, isn't this the little jerk who seduces the wealthy second generation everywhere? It seems that you have quite a leisurely and elegant demeanor. You came here early in the morning to admire flowers and plants. Just as Lin Anran was pondering, a crisp voice suddenly rang out from behind her. Lin Anran turned around to look and found that the person coming was the other person she had just seen in the video. The girl in uniform. At the same time, this girl is Lin Mengyue, the daughter born to Lin Anran's father after his divorce and remarriage, and also the current daughter of the Lin family. Due to the extremely arrogant nature of his biological mother, coupled with the fact that he has hardly suffered any injustice since childhood, this guy appears to be a naive and innocent little princess. But in fact, he is a jerk who doesn't consider people at all. It seems that your current state is quite good. I thought you would hide in the corner and secretly wipe your tears. Speaking of which, it seems that in our relationship, I still want to call you sister. It's really frustrating. After complaining to herself, Lin Mengyue curled her lips and proudly raised her head, holding her chest with both hands in an arrogant manner. It seems like you haven't been in touch with your father for a long time, and his impression of you seems to have been stuck in the past when you were well behaved, but he doesn't know how he will view you, a long time away and extremely promiscuous guy, when this news reaches his ears. She smiled and then the conversation changed. However, although your reputation has already tarnished, as long as you obediently listen to Ms. Yan's words and marry that disgusting and perverted man, I cannot temporarily suppress this disgusting matter, so that you will still be a well-behaved and good child in your father's impression. After speaking, the proud little princess raised her head again, waiting for Lin Anran's answer. Has it not been transmitted to my father yet? Lin Anran whispered, as if talking to herself. That's right, so you just need to be obedient and obedient. Although Lin Anran's voice was small, it was still heard by Lin Mengyue. So. Lin Anran raised her head and spoke. So agree, then kneel down like a dog and lick my shoes, pleading for my forgiveness. Then quickly go back to find that foolish Ms. Yan and finalize that ridiculous marriage today. Lin Mengyue stretched out her long black silk legs and lightly tapped her beautiful little boots, hugging her chest and jokingly saying. But when she looked at Lin Anran again, she found that the girl she had been holding onto since childhood was now full of impatience, with a hint of violence in her eyes that seemed to startle her heart. She had also witnessed this kind of gaze before, which was the only fierce gaze possessed by desperate and destitute individuals. I said, are you a fool? Since just now, you've been talking to yourself endlessly. Are all the people from the Lin family brainwashed idiots? Although your intestines and brain look very similar, you can't just put history in your head. But I can help you insert your head full of history into your ass. Speaking of which, it seems like I was supposed to settle accounts with you, but I didn't expect you to come knocking on me. A smile tugged at the corner of Lin Anran's mouth, making Lin Mengyue uneasy. A pair of shiny big eyes were like a pool of stagnant water, staring fixedly at Lin Menuet's fragile neck. Chapter 6. Practical Operations. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. Chapter 7. Filling. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Although complaints come and go, life still has to continue. Lin Anran only lifted his lips, and there were no other unnecessary movements. She was about to habitually cross her legs and squat down, but considering that she was wearing a skirt today, she decided to kneel next to Lin Menuet with her legs together. I touched the other person again and took out a phone that looked very expensive. After picking up Lin Menuet's delicate fingers to unlock her phone, Lin Anran quickly opened the young lady's small vault. Then this string of zeros almost blinded Lin Anran's eyes. I really deserve to be from a wealthy family. If it weren't for that damn Yen Qiu, I probably would have been so rich too. Recalling the difficult days after being with Yen Qiu, Lin Anran pursed her lips and slowly transferred all the money to her phone. Very good, I have money now. Lin Anran stood up and looked at the balance interface with satisfaction. Indeed, robbing the rich to help the poor is the quickest way to get money. As for whether her actions will provoke retaliation from the Lin family, this will not happen from the beginning. Except for those elders who use their power to bully others, the Lin family generally adheres to the principle of finding their own place by themselves, in all other situations. This also allows Lin Anran to have almost no psychological pressure when robbing her sister. Just be a little more careful about Lin Menuet herself and her dog-legs revenge. But when it comes to the aspect of the underworld, Lin Anran is also a senior sixth, and it's not something that Lin Menuet's childish ideas can squat on. Putting away her phone, Lin Anran looked at the beautiful woman lying on the ground, pondering for a moment, and finally stopped the steps she was supposed to leave. The golden light from the fingertips converged into the shape of a spatula. The pot shovel of the brave. Lin Anran held the pot spatula with a powerful prefix and waved it in the air, then made a decent gesture of retracting the knife. It has to be said that although this thing doesn't look very intimidating, coupled with Lin Anran's appearance, it looks more like a child playing with kitchen utensils at home. But in reality, this thing is not much different from a sword. Both in terms of feel and weight, this spatula seems to cater to Lin Anran's preferences, automatically improving its center of gravity balance and length. Even the part of the shovel on the spatula can be extended, ending up like a long sword with a square tip. Did some brave person who defies the heavens use a spatula to fight against the Demon King? The spatula is like a holy sword. Upon reflection, Lin Anran summoned the Demon King's kitchen knife again. There are also countless dots of light, but unlike the brave, their direction is not falling from the sky, but rising from their feet. The color of the light is also different from the hopeful bright gold, but a more gloomy black purple. These rays of light converged in a reverse spiral to Lin Anran's left hand, forming a ferocious machete that was nearly 1 meter long and covered in black purple all over. The blade flickered with a chilling and heart-wrenching light, and Lin Anran's corner of the eye swept to this point, feeling as if the temperature around her had dropped slightly. At the same time, the tip of this machete even had several heart-wrenching spikes. It's even hard to imagine what a bloody scene it would be if this thing were stabbed into the body and then forcefully pulled out. The blade is also engraved with a bloodletting groove, which truly arranges various functions in place. The only problem may be that this machete cannot change its weight according to Lin Anran's wishes. Helpless, Lin Anran could only temporarily retract this Demon King's kitchen knife. After all, her left hand is still tied with a bandage and cannot withstand such a weight. Of course, Lin Anran can also use his right hand to hold this kitchen knife, and there is no restriction on the use of this weapon. Just now, her right hand was still holding the brave spatula, but when she was about to change hands, she had already retracted this ferocious kitchen knife. After thinking about it, there is no need to bother summoning it again. Just know what it looks like. Lin Anran took a few steps forward and sat down on Lin Manuel's slender waist, twisting her buttocks left and right. It's quite soft and comfortable. After finding a suitable seat, she sat astride the young lady and stared carefully at the person below her with wide eyes. With Lin Anran's gaze, countless subtitles also appeared in the void. Lin Manuel, talent. Phantom Moon Spirit Dance, Chi and Blood. 20. Talent skills. Scarlet Moon Blade, unawakened, Moon Night Guardian, unawakened, Divine Moon Sword Dance, unawakened, Moon Blossom Cutting Sky Technique, unawakened. This has given me a surprise. Lin Anran, sitting on her soft body, noticed the subtitles in front of her and couldn't help but feel a hint of surprise. I didn't expect her appraisal skill to be able to see someone else's personal panel. You should know that personal panels are a very private and secretive thing. Apart from some costly methods, conventional exploration can only see the name, profession, and approximate chi and blood, energy, index at most. Don't be fooled by the fact that 2.5 of the 4 panels have been explored by others. The only talent skill that has not been explored is the key. It's like some people awaken shield warriors, but suddenly gain a mutated ability of backstab stealth while advancing their profession. This is equivalent to having a trump card that no one else knows. And this trump card may save him in dire straits at a critical moment. Of course, the above situations are only a minority. Just like the awakened chef can only cook for a lifetime, the awakened shield warrior can only obediently serve as the front row meat for a lifetime. But why hasn't her skills awakened yet? By the way, she hasn't reached the age of awakening yet. Lin Anran, who was thinking about why Lin Manuel's skills all have suffixes, suddenly remembered that the girl under her was actually 3 years younger than herself. In the end, Lin Anran hesitated for a moment and slowly extended his 2 sinful hands, rubbing against the obvious bulge of the young lady below him a few times, until the person below him let out a few moans before suddenly stopping. Lin Anran is now 18 years old, so this Lin Manuel is at most 15 years old now. Is this a 15-year-old figure? Lin Anran fell into contemplation. This young lady is almost a head taller than her, and she wears black silk that is knee-high all day, looking like a domineering lady. But actually only 15 years old. It seems that the Lin family's food is quite good. Muttering, Lin Anran temporarily closed Lin Manuel's personal panel. Those things have not provided her with any substantial help for the time being, except for envy of her talent. At most, I am a little curious why this person, despite not having the awakening talent, can summon their own talent weapon, the Scarlet Moon. But upon careful consideration, you can understand. It must be that the Lin family, who have a great family and business, used some precious thing that can allow people to use some of their innate skills in advance. Shit yen chio. Lin Anran once again angrily spat at the floor. If it weren't for that woman being a demon all day, why would Lin Anran fall into the trap of snatching the little treasury of a 15-year-old girl? It's broken. I feel guilty now. Lin Anran shook her head and forcefully suppressed the surging sense of guilt, continuing to use her appraisal skills to study Lin Manuel's body. Whether to say or not, it truly deserves to be the appraisal of the culinary god. At a glance, it's all recipes. For example, I glanced at Lin Manuel's pure white neck with my eyes. This identification directly brings up some recipes and cooking guides about this area. In addition, Lin Anran's own cooking intuition. This even made Lin Anran's hands itch. Chapter 8. Rudder Control. You are listening at novelfull.audio. But no matter how itchy his heart was, Lin Anran still knew very well that Lin Manuel could not move. Losing comes at a disadvantage, but once it reaches the level of safety, it is completely different. Even if it's just a brief disappearance, the Lin family may still face it with the most serious attitude. After gesturing on Lin Manuel's body with her fingers for a while, Lin Anran finally sighed and stood up. Let's just stop here. The Lin family's bodyguards are probably already surrounded. Lin Anran let out a helpless sigh, tidied up her clothes, and was about to leave this empty classroom. Staying here is of no use anymore. But as she went out, she suddenly felt a hint of something wrong. So Lin Anran, who trusted his intuition extremely, quickly squatted down and walked lightly to the window. Outside is a large wilderness, seemingly an area for building a teaching building. So now there are overgrown weeds and not many people usually go there. But Lin Anran still cautiously watched everything outside the window. Although she didn't see anything invisible just now, Lin Anran instinctively wanted to avoid leaking her information. Especially just now she summoned two weapons, the Brave and the Demon King. At that time, it was also a sudden idea to take advantage of the situation, so Lin Anran did not investigate the surrounding situation in a timely manner. Now, considering this, it can be considered a very dangerous behavior. Showing weakness to the outside world has always been the foundation for Lin Anran's survival in his past and present lives. She still doesn't want to expose her methods unless it's necessary. After observing for a few minutes, the wilderness outside was peaceful, which made her furrow slightly. Although everything outside the window is normal, Lin Anran strongly believes in his intuition as a blood liquor. So considering that the world was filled with various magical talents, she decided to hold on to it. Continue to lie quietly by the window, hiding in the black gap between the curtains. Lin Anran entered an extremely focused state, in which she could even keep herself almost stationary. Curl her body as much as possible to make her look small and clumpy, and hide in the small darkness, making it extremely easy to overlook. It lasted for almost 10 minutes before she finally breathed a sigh of relief. It seems like there really isn't anyone around. Lin Anran withdrew from the previous state and let out the unpleasant smell of the newly renovated classroom twice before leaving the window and bending down to pick up Lin Menyue's phone. She almost forgot about it just now. Sliding her fingers, she opened the college forum and found that the video was indeed posted by Lin Menyue, while Yen Qiu, as an outsider, did not have the qualifications to post. Lin Anran first deleted the video, and then edited a string of text. Attention everyone, the Lin family has intervened in the investigation into my phone being stolen and using my name to attack others. Now I demand that you all stop discussing this matter, because it seriously affects my reputation and the authority of the Lin family. Therefore, once I know who dares to secretly discuss it, the Lin family will hold it to the end. Click to send. Lin Anran sent this long series of messages to the original video post, and added it to the top to ensure that people can see it at first glance. She knows that those who have watched the video will feel that something is not right, because the young lady has also made comments in the video. But Lin Anran believes that this group of people dare not gamble on the possibility that this post is fake. As expected, all the comments below the original post disappeared in a large area that was visible to the naked eye. Especially for those with extremely high likes, Lin Anran deleted all comments within a minute of issuing a statement. At the same time, Lin Anran glanced at the time and found that since she posted comments, no one in the forum dared to casually comment and discuss this matter anymore. Everyone who saw the post coincidentally chose to ignore it, causing the heat of this matter to naturally dissipate. After all, the authority of a super aristocratic family like the Lin family is not something they can violate. Watching the comments in the post go from hundreds to tens and then to single digits, Lin Anran slightly curled her lips, feeling a little relieved in her heart. She still likes to tease these silly dogs who are determined by others and follow the trend. Looking at the speed of deleting this comment, Lin Anran could even imagine that these people who commented recklessly in the post, after seeing the just posted statement, frantically deleted the post they had just racked their brains on. Then some righteous people still remember to tell their friends and ask those who have also posted comments to quickly delete them. After finishing all this, the group of people sweated profusely and picked up their books, pretending to study seriously. Afraid of being approached by Lin Menyue and the Lin family. You remembered it for me. Suddenly, a weak voice reached Lin Anran's ear, causing him to curl up the slightly curled corners of his mouth and turn his head to look at Lin Manuel, who had just woken up. I saw this destitute young lady holding her head and trembling as she climbed up from the ground. I remember, the little sister of the Lin family was beaten hard by me today. Lin Anran looked at the girl who was staring at him with anger on her face, and then stepped on the other person's hand that wanted to retrieve the tie dao. You. What are you? Do your defeated generals still have temper? Lin Anran completely ignored Lin Manuel's expression of wanting to kill, and even smiled and ran over her delicate hand with her small leather shoes. Damn it. You wait for me. Lin Manuel forcefully pulled back her hand, which was red from being stepped on, and ran to the empty classroom door with her head drooping like a losing rooster. She turned around and angrily defeated Lin Anran, who was standing still. I'm waiting, come over if you have the ability. Lin Anran bent down and picked up Lin Manuel's tie dao feiyu, taking a step towards the young lady at the door. Lin Manuel, who was standing at the door immediately, stepped back repeatedly, and even turned around and ran away without even asking for her phone. Indeed, it's a pity that a good-looking skin bag can easily evoke sympathy. Lin Anran took feiyu back from her scabbard. She had just realized that Lin Manuel was a bit playful and even had a hint of wanting to keep her. Sure enough, the black silk of that young lady is too tempting. So she made a decision immediately. Leave the black silk intact when you start. It's not very interesting, I just feel like it's a pity that thing's gone. Thinking of this, Lin Anran suddenly thought of something and quickly took out Lin Manuel's phone. Reopened the college forum and opened the personal information column. I found the icon for the settings inside, and when I opened it, the option to change the password suddenly appeared. Upon seeing this, Lin Anran was delighted. As the most influential website of the college forum can save a lot of trouble by having a high authority account. Lin Anran opened the option to change the password, but to her disappointment, if you need to change the password, you must enter the original password again. Okay. Lin Anran felt a bit regretful, but still opened the input page and repeatedly entered the wrong password on the operation page. A few times later, a string of prompts popped up on the password change page of the forum. Due to multiple incorrect password inputs, the account will be temporarily closed to protect its security. If you need to unblock it, please contact Teacher Lu from the information department. Immediately after, Lin Anran discovered that Lin Manuel's forum account had been forcibly logged out. Try logging in with the saved account password again, but no matter how many times it appears, the account does not exist. It seems that after the account is blocked, logging in will show that it does not exist. That will test whether Lin Manuel's CPU can be turned over. As for why did Lin Anran ban his account? Anyway, when Lin Manuel found out that Lin Anran was messing around, she would definitely use other phones to block her account. So why not just ban her? Although it doesn't have any substantial effect, it can definitely make that young lady very unhappy. Okay, it's good to cause you some trouble. Murmuring, Lin Anran stuffed her phone into her skirt pocket, tidied up her clothes, and then left the empty classroom. Chapter 9. Nobility. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. Chapter 10. White hair. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. To the surprise of the young man, Lin Anran seemed to have no fear of the body in front of him. Instead, he turned his gaze to himself and asked about the responsibility of the girl after her death. This made the young man who regarded human life as worthless couldn't help but burst into laughter. You don't have to worry, all the girls here, or in other words, everyone in the entire tavern, are black households that don't exist in the urban system. All of them were slave animals that I bought from these people's parents, just my own. The young man's words made the remaining two maids show a hint of melancholy smile, but the next moment was well concealed. However, the young man did not pay any attention to the attitude of these lowly people. Instead, he waved his hand and let the maid drink the wine, then moistened his mouth and continued. So you don't have to worry about any law enforcement agencies coming up. Those profit-oriented guys don't care about some unidentified animals. The young man said arrogantly, but then his expression on the face tightened and he smashed the glass in his hand onto the table, making a loud bang. I have two options for you now, one is to have your limbs chopped off and thrown into the wilderness. As the youth spoke, the sunglasses man next to Lin Anran pulled a knife from the scabbard around his waist. The second is to sign my human rights transfer agreement, as my lifelong service to animals. The young man draped his long legs in trousers onto the table in front of him, shaking the glass in his hand. At the same time, a maid behind the young man walked forward, took out a piece of paper from her shoulder bag, and placed it on the table. Seeing this scene, Lin Anran sighed. Although she knew from the original owner's memory of the law enforcement team's extreme indulgence towards these members of the aristocratic family, she did not expect it to be so tolerated. She glanced at the human rights transfer agreement on the table. The content roughly means voluntarily giving up all rights as a citizen and becoming Mr. Gu, also known as the youth's pet. And voluntarily give up all human rights, giving up all according to Mr. Gu's wishes. And what surprised Lin Anran was, in the lower right corner of this agreement, there is a double seal of Human Union and Parkside City. That is to say, this agreement can be considered the most despicable in human history. Directly recognized by the two most authoritative organizations in humanity. Lin Anran looked up at the young man in front of him, slowly sipping the wine in his glass, and suddenly realized that the world seemed to be more than just a foolish woman like Yen Qiu. But the erosion here has become mainstream. Aren't you planning to take action yet? Without warning, Lin Anran shifted her gaze to the empty corner and spoke out to inquire. Don't just make a fuss, don't think I'll let you go if you pretend to be mischievous. The young man heard Lin Anran's words and slowly lowered his legs on the table, frowning. The man in sunglasses beside Lin Anran also furrowed his brows and reached out a big hand to grab Lin Anran's head. Suddenly, an ancient sword appeared from mid-air, and in the next moment, the sunglasses man was cut in half from the middle, with blood instantly staining the ground red. I didn't expect to really notice me, you're so amazing. A crisp and pleasant unfamiliar female voice rang out from the enclosed private room. The sound was not loud, but for some reason, it had a faint echo with the surrounding environment. With the sound, a figure suddenly appeared in the private room. A graceful and elegant white and ink robe, with the hem of the robe reaching up to the ankles, revealing the white and tender jade feet beneath. The wide cuffs naturally drooped, and the ink-colored ancient sword was gently grasped by a slender and graceful palm. The most eye-catching features were her waist-high white hair, pure like flying snow, and a pair of azure eyes on her beautiful cheeks. This makes this girl, who is out of place with modern art style, even more noble and beautiful like a pure white elf who sneaks in from a fairy tale. Of course, one should overlook the bloody feat of the opponent's first appearance, where they cut a 2-meter-tall man in half with a single sword. As soon as the visitor appeared, they stared at Lin Anran with their azure eyes, as if wanting to use these captivating eyes to completely see through Lin Anran from the inside out. Bang! Suddenly, a loud noise interrupted Lin Anran, who was staring at the white-haired girl. I saw the young man sitting upright clapping up the table. How unreasonable! How dare you kill someone in front of me? With the roar of the youth, the door of the private room was immediately opened, and 7 or 8 big men holding firearms rushed into the room, surrounding Lin Anran and the white-haired girl in groups. Gun. Lin Anran looked at the weapons held by the big men around him, feeling lost in thought. She thought this innate world didn't have this thing. It seems that no matter which world it is, firearms are the most basic human claws. Are you strange? But it seems like you already knew about the existence of this thing, so why do you still feel strange? The hint of surprise in Lin Anran's eyes did not hide from the white-haired girl who had been staring at her, so the white-haired girl frowned and began to think. Yeah, I'm a bit surprised. Lin Anran turned her gaze to the white-haired girl and responded calmly. She just didn't expect there to be guns in this world. It seems that you still have many secrets. The white-haired girl nodded, her azure eyes still fixed on Lin Anran, but they were quite ethereal. It seems that this person is thinking about something. Beat your limbs. Kill them alive. The conversation between the two had just ended when the young man standing behind the big man suddenly waved his hand, his eyes full of malice. Then his gaze shifted towards the white-haired girl in a historical robe in the center of the crowd, and the young man's gaze couldn't help but show a hint of amazement. But he still froze and took a few steps back. Although the white-haired girl is very beautiful and he is also very tempted, he can still distinguish right from wrong. With the opponent's advanced stealth skills, once you attack him, there is really no way out. There is another black hair. He had already noticed when he ordered the body of the maid to be thrown in front of the other party. This person is probably not a fuel-efficient lamp either. There was no trace of fear in those eyes, but an extremely cruel indifference. The intelligence is incorrect. That black hair is definitely not just a talent of a useless chef. So the young man noticed this and began to constantly bluff, waiting for the arrival of rescue. Now. You all go to hell. The young man burst out laughing cruelly, and the big men in front of him were about to pull the trigger in their hands. Lin Anran's face froze as she was about to pull out the Tai Dao Fei Yu from behind to make a counterattack. Unexpectedly, the white-haired girl suddenly and slowly lifted her head, and the ancient sword in her hand burst out with a thick black sword light. The next second, as the ink sword light flashed like a swimming dragon, the room suddenly surged with air, and everyone present's sleeves were rustled by the violent airflow. After a moment, the breath finally calmed down. Lin Anran raised her head and was surprised to find that all the armed men around her had been cut off by her waist. For a moment, the thumping sound of the limbs falling to the ground was endless. The air was filled with a pungent and foul-smelling smell of blood.